And as we just heard, premiers are meeting with Indigenous leaders this afternoon. Cassidy Caron is the president of the Métis National Council, and she joins me now. So Cassidy Caron, I want to start with, if I can, with these very emotional protests we saw today. People wanting the search of this landfill to look for the remains of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris. What do you think needs to happen in that situation? Should the search go ahead?
I absolutely think the search should go ahead. Our people need to be valued the same as all Canadians. We didn't get to see the protest. We certainly heard it in the meeting this afternoon. One of the things that I raised with the premiers is the need for Indigenous peoples and issues to be valued the same as all issues that Canadians face. And until the time that our Indigenous women are valued at the same as others, this crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is going to continue, and it's destructive to our communities. It's heart-wrenching, and it was really actually quite heart-wrenching to hear the protest happening outside of the meeting today, and my heart goes out to those families.
Did you get any sense of whether Premier Stephenson would change her mind? She said it's too risky from a health and safety perspective to go ahead with it, but if the federal government wanted to do it, she wouldn't stand in the way. But did you get any sense of a change in Manitoba's position?
No, she didn't make any mention of it today.
Okay, I want to get to the meeting. The reason you're in Manitoba right now for these meetings is that you said you're going to lay out conditions for future Métis and Inuit participation in future meetings of Canada's premiers. Nathan Obed of the ITK is not there because he's unhappy with the format. How were those conditions spelled out, and how were they received by the premiers?
I think they were received actually quite positively by the premiers. Unfortunately, the format of today's meeting didn't even really allow for me to lay those out and then have a meaningful discussion around it. And that just signals how poorly this meeting is planned, how poorly we are treated as national Indigenous leaders in this space. But I laid out our conditions for participation, expressing that there's a need to make space for national Indigenous leaders, the representatives of Section 35 rights-bearing people recognized in the Constitution, Métis, First Nations, Inuit, represented nationally by the AFN, the ITK, and the MNC, and to create space for meaningful engagement in these issues. I was provided 15 minutes on the agenda this afternoon to lay out all of the priorities of the Métis Nation to the premiers of this country, with no time for them to respond and have critical engagement on these issues. This meeting just is simply, quite frankly, tokenistic, and until we transform the way this meeting moves forward, it's not providing for that meaningful space for us to delve into these issues that affect their jurisdictions, affect our country as a whole, contribute to the reconciliation agenda. And I hope that we can continue to have this dialogue throughout the next year to transform this meeting so that we can come to the table next year and truly make progress on these issues.
So am I understanding you right? If they don't change the format and the way this is done and the way the conversation and actual dialogue happens, you won't be showing up next year either? Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. It was really quite disrespectful of my time as a national leader to sit through 2 hours of the meeting that was really quite focused on just Manitoba-specific issues. There was presentations from local Indigenous peoples for the first 2 hours of the meeting, and then the last 50 minutes of the meeting was divided up between myself, the regional chief from Manitoba, and then 2 other issues-based organizations at the table, and then no time for the premiers to actually respond. So there's definitely need to change the format and actually respect these issues that we're bringing to them.
Did you get any indication whatsoever that the premiers are open to changing this for next year? Were you able to voice this displeasure with them directly, and did you get any kind of a response?
I was. So on my way out of the meeting, I engaged with a number of premiers who said, let's have the conversation in the coming weeks to figure out how we can make this change moving forward. I hope that there's an appetite for this moving forward, because it would really be a shame to not have this participation in intergovernmental fora between the governments, the provincial and territorial governments, and Indigenous peoples. It's critical that we participate in these intergovernmental fora, but it has to be respectful of Indigenous peoples.
So I wonder then, are you hopeful that things will be changed. I know Natan Obed, very publicly said he didn't think it was worth going, and you sort of brought that message there in person as to why you feel this is so deficient. Based on that reception and what the other premier said to you, are you at all hopeful that this can be improved so that it's worth your time a year from now?
I didn't get any indication that it would not be changed in the future. So what we'll do is we'll have follow-ups with the premiers and continue these conversations. And I suppose we'll just have to follow up with you in the coming weeks, coming months, and then next year when we hopefully are actually invited to the formal meeting of the Council of Federation, because this meeting, again, we weren't even invited to. It was a pre-meeting of premiers and Indigenous leaders.